exciting things, and it kind of leads us on to our second wine, is that you guys are not only working to transform your, so you have 65 hectares that you own, transforming that to organic, but you're also the first ever carbon neutral house. So tell us about that.
Yes, yes. So yes, starting with the vine, because obviously that's the most important asset when you're a winemaker. We have 65 hectares, which is quite big for a small family, and then we have another 50 hectares that my brother Hugo. So I have two brothers, both into the production aspect. My brother Hugo, who's 29, is really responsible for the change into the carbon neutral footprint and also the conversion, the organic conversion. So we've been sustainable for many years, but it was quite a step until we moved to organic, especially when we have now 17 hectares organic, which is quite big if you're familiar with and you are with the conditions of growth in Champagne. There's many reasons why a lot of producers haven't risked to be organic. It's really tough. So we're now one of the largest organic estate in Champagne, having 17 hectares accredited, and we're moving towards 100%. So my brother is really extreme in his position. He really wants to be a game changer in the organic landscape in Champagne. But what my father thought and what we believed as a family is that it's too restrictive to think about environment footprint and only take the vineyards, because Champagne production is complex, is long, it takes a lot of water. So we took the holistic approach, trying to tackle everything we do at each step of the Champagne process, reducing our footprint. So you can start from the bottle you have in your hand is 15% lighter than a regular Champagne bottle. So when you ship it, it's not as heavy. We produce 75% of our electricity, so we have photovoltaic panels everywhere. We use electric tractors, which is quite unusual. We use electric cars. So every little things we could do to achieve a carbon neutral footprint. And I believe it's quite an unusual stand in Champagne. We're actually the only carbon neutral wine estate in France so far, because I know a lot of people are now getting interested in it. But yeah, it's a little too restrictive to think, oh, my Champagne must be clean because it's organic. No, it's a lot more complex than that, and it's as complex as Champagne is. So we thought it would be interesting to extend it to the whole Champagne process.
What I found really interesting is JC, who's based here in Singapore, said he came to visit you in Erville, and when he arrived, Michel, your father, welcomed him and said, "Oh, where have you driven from?" He said, from Reims, okay. And so he went and calculated the kilometers, and then he offset the carbon of JC's trip from Reims to Erville.
Yes, that's what he does. Yes. And every trip we make, that doesn't surprise me for my father. Yeah, we try to minimize everything because that's we believe that's the future. You have to have a really minimum, and our objective is to be actually a carbon positive. So we will produce more electricity than we actually use.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Everyone needs to follow in your example, Charline. That's excellent. Now, this Clarevallis is a new cuvee which has recently been launched, if I'm not mistaken, and I believe it's from the 17 hectares of organic vineyards.
Yes.
So these are vineyards that not only are grown in organic conditions and certified, but also you till them with your own horses, which I believe your other brother.
My other brother. Yes. Yeah. Antoine. So I mentioned Hugo. He's my younger brother. He's 28, and then there's Antoine, He's my youngest brother. He's 23, and he's not into the wine at all. I think he rejected that. He's the man. He's the man of the wild, and he's really much into animals and plants and all of this. And he said, I want to join you, but I'm really not interested in the business aspect or the winemaking. But he's always worked with horses since he was 14, and now he has 2 horses that he uses to farm our vineyards. So not all of it, because it's not possible. We calculated that if we wanted to farm everything with horses, we would need to have 35 horses.
Wow.
Yeah, so but he does all the organic, and because it helps having a closer work to the plant, and most importantly less erosion, because the tractor is heavy. So we choose the parcel that he works on depending on all of that. So it's complex, depending on the steepness, depending on the risk of erosion. So it's a big labor. My grandfather was crazy when my brother said, I want to reintroduce the horses, because he spent part of his life trying to buy his first tractor. For him, my grandparents were really pioneer. They were the first winemakers in the Aube. They were quite poor farmers, and before it took him 10 years before he bought his first tractor. So it was interesting to see that intergenerational discussion, quite a heated discussion about why would you reintroduce horses when I spent all that energy. So it's interesting to see my generation coming with all that, digging in old ideas to transform it with modern ways, which is also the case with the old varietals that we'll talk about later. And Clarevallis, so that was really more of my brothers and my job to design the wine of my generation. And it's interesting because even in this wine, we reintroduced Blanc Vrai, which is the Champagne name for Pinot Blanc, because my brother wanted to pay a tribute to the varietals that were always in the vines from my grandparents. Back in the day, they were not really sure about how to vinify separately. So the Pinot Blanc was, to be honest, blend before the press. They didn't know. And he thought it was interesting to reintroduce that kind of old way of mixing grapes before they were even vinified. And it's interesting because it really adds something different. The fact that it has Chardonnay, Meunier, and Blanc Vrai, so it's a bit more vibrant. It's more on the light floral notes than our Brut Nature, which is more focused on a deep, fruity structure and mineral champagne. So it's quite exciting to see this taking what the previous generations made and using it with our own interpretation. And I didn't talk about the name, but Clarevallis is the name of the abbey I told you about earlier, which is Clairvaux. Clarevallis is the Latin name of Clairvaux, and it really is also paying a tribute to the Cistercian heritage. And obviously, back in the days, they were not farming with any pesticide, so it's like farming like the monks did.
Good on you. I love it. I love the idea behind it, but it's also got an incredibly pronounced nose. It's absolutely stunning. Now, I believe that this is aged in, so I think you may have mentioned it, you have Cistercian cellars underneath the Drappier house.
Yes. So for those of you who've visited already, yes, we have cellars that were built in 1152. And it's quite unusual, very old cellars for champagne. And one of the two remaining from that Cistercian days, most of them were destroyed.